Hello everyone. During this video, we will discuss CS200 Week 1 concepts. My name is Linda Gaston and I am your instructor. So, during Week 1, in your Zybook, we discuss the Python print command, printing strings, printing variables, and the input function and reading user input. Let's talk a bit about the Python print statement. Printing output to a screen is a very common programming task. So most programmers want to interact or convey some type of information to their user, and a common place to do it is on the computer screen. The primary way to print output to display on the computer screen to a user is by taking advantage of the built-in Python print function. And we call this a function because this particular command will take in values inside of these parentheses and operate on them. In this case, it will print those values inside of the parentheses to the screen. So printing text is simply performed by just using the print statement and enclosing something inside of the parentheses. In this particular case, we're printing what's called a string literal. This means we literally want to print hello world. And to designate that this is a string literal, we put it inside of quote marks. So text enclosed in quotes is known as a string literal. So text in string literals can be numbers or spaces or even special characters or symbols like the @ sign or the pound sign. So when we look at a string, and you'll learn a lot more about them in this class, just think about them as a sequence of characters. So the string hello, as designated in the quote marks here, is really a sequence of characters H, E, L, L, and O. Similarly, we can have what looks like a number, but it's really a string. This 1, 2, 3, it consists of characters 1, 2, and 3, which is a lot different than the number 1, 2, 3, which we can do mathematical operations on. And we'll talk a lot more about that in a minute. If we want to print a string, there's several ways we can do it. The first way is to print multiple print statements. Each one of them will print on a new output line. And then we can also format that printing a bit by using this in statement here. So if we want to print the word hello and we want what follows it to be on the same line, we would simply append end equals quote mark, quote mark. Specifying this keeps the next line's output on the same line as this one, separated by a single space. Here's an example of this. So in this first statement, we have 3 print statements that's printing 3 separate string literals. Notice, this is the default value. They're on different lines. If we include this end equals quote mark, that's going to keep these values on the same line. So if we put this here, that means whatever follows will be on the same line. So now we have hello there with the end statement, my name is with the end statement, and Carl. So notice now everything is on the same line, which is a lot more intuitive. This is the way we're typically used to seeing information like this. So the end statement is going to format it and keep it on the same line. Now, there are times that we want to print calculated values or values that have been saved in memory in some way. Values that are saved in memory are called variables. So it's just simply a name that represents some stored value in memory, and we can use the name of the variable to access that data that's stored in memory. So the variable name will reference some value. And we can use assignment statements to put values in variables. Here's the structure. The general structure to do this is some variable name equals some expression or number. In this case, we have a variable called age that we're going to assign a value of 29. So this value will go inside of the variable, and here is the assignment operator. We can print variables quite easily. We just use the print statement with the variable name. Now notice we don't put the variable name in quotes because we're not using a string literal here. We are using the value that's inside of the variable name. So this print statement will look at the variable name, find the place in memory that's allocated for this variable name, and take its value and print it. Here's an example of this. We have wage equals 20. With this assignment statement here, we've taken the value of 20 and put it inside of the variable wage. Now we're going to print the string literal wage equals, wage is, and then we have the end statement, meaning what follows will be on the same line. Then we're going to actually print our variable. This pound sign, what is for a comment. So anything after this pound sign on the same line will be ignored by your interpreter. So this is just a comment. We're going to print the variable's value here, and then we're going to just print simply the string literal goodbye. So now this is going to print wages 20. Notice we have this on the same line, and then goodbye. That's on a separate line because we don't have the end statement on this line. The end statement makes whatever follows the line be on the same line. We don't have one here, so goodbye will be on another line. Okay, this is where we're printing the wage. There are variable naming rules. The most important one is the variable name cannot be a Python keyword, and Python keywords are words we use for Python instructions, like print. That is a keyword, so we can't name a variable print. Variable names cannot contain spaces. The first character of your variable must be a letter or an underscore. So we can't start a variable name with a number. After the first character, however, we can use letters or numbers or underscores. And variable names are case sensitive. That means lowercase wage, W-A-G-E, will be interpreted by your Python interpreter very different from all capitals, capital wage, capital W, capital A, capital G, capital E. That's very different. So the case of the letter gives it a case of the variable name gives it a special value. And a variable name should reflect its use, meaning if you are calculating wage, call it wage or something that reflects that meaning rather than X or Y or Z. Now let's talk about ways that we can get input from the user, which makes our programs a lot more useful. So many programs allow users to enter values for calculations or to allow the user to interact with your program. And this is achieved simply using the Python input function. So if we have a statement name equals input left paren right paren, that's going to allow the user to enter text that will be read in and assigned into this variable name. So if we have an instruction to type a statement that reads a user entered string into a variable called my variable, that would simply be, here's the variable, my variable equals input. That means whatever the user enters will be assigned into the variable. And the Python interpreter handles input in the following manner. So if you have an input statement, it's going to cause the interpreter to wait till the user has entered some text and pushed the return key. Now it's important to note that whatever the user enters after they hit the return key, that's going to be entered into a variable as a string. So values that we get from the user in this way is text or string values, character data. It won't be interpreted in a numeric manner. So here's another example. If you enter the name of your best friend, this is a print statement. This will simply print the string literal here, enter the name of your best friend. Now we have this end statement because we want whatever follows to be printed on the same line. Then we have this prompt here to input, for the user to input a value, and it's going to go into the variable best friend. Then we're going to print my best friend is, and then the variable name that we got from the input statement. Now here, apparently the user entered Marty McFly. Okay, here's where we enter the input and put it in the variable. Here's where we print the variable. So as I stated, when we input values from the user in this manner, they come in as text values or string literals. But we can use the int function, another built-in Python function, to convert strings to an integer. So here's an example where we want to read in a value from the user and convert it to a number, okay, using this int function. So we have my string equals 1, 2, 3. This is text value here, because notice it's a string literal. Then we can use this int function. We could convert a string literal to an integer and put it in this variable value. So we use this function, we convert it to an integer and put it inside the variable value, and then we can print both of them. Now, even though they look the same, they are very different. In the first case, we're printing a string, and in this case, 1, 2, 3 is an actual integer value, not a collection of characters as this string is. So we can combine these two to read in a value from the user and convert it to use in a calculation. So we're going to get a string value in here in the input statement. Then we're going to use the int function to convert it to a number and use it in a calculation. So let's say we prompt the user to enter hours worked. This will simply print the string literal to the screen. Then we're going to prompt the user to input a value. We're going to feed what they enter here to the int function, so it's going to convert it to an integer, and then we're going to assign that to the hours worked. So get used to kind of using this inside out or right to left type interpretation of expressions. You'll see it a lot in Python. So here, what's inside of the parentheses is what the user inputted. That's what will be converted to an integer and assigned to the variable. Similarly, we'll ask the user to enter a pay rate. We simply print this string literal to the screen. Then the next thing we do is we use this input command to take whatever the user enters after they're prompted by this string literal, convert it to an integer and put it in pay rate. Then we can calculate the pay. It's hours worked, the first variable that we entered, times the pay rate. Notice the star in Python is for multiplication. Then we assign that value to the variable called pay, and then we can print the string literal your pay is, followed by the actual variable. So we want to print a string literal. We separate these two values with a comma, and so your pay is whatever this calculation is will print. If you have questions, please email me to arrange a virtual office appointment, and stay tuned for future live classes and tutorials in this class. I'll post them in announcements. Thank you for your time and attention during this video.